me. Nice little quaint little always kindly old New England town. Welcome.
Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome back to the Disney Movie Marathon. Today we're continuing our series on Disney's Lady and the Tramp and moving on to the sequel, Lady and the Tramp II, Scamp's Adventure. Joining me once again are Nicki and Katie, and we all probably know where this one is going, so let's just get on with it. Had you guys seen this before this time?
I feel like maybe because my nieces had all the sequels just because they were in that age. I feel like might have seen the sequels with them like at one point, but it was more like background noise by and large.
Mm-hmm. I think I watched this once because I vaguely remember when it came out. I would have been early teens, and like if Disney came out with a new movie, we borrowed it from the library at least once. So I know I've seen this at least once, but I had forgotten the entire thing. I did not remember what this movie was about. I didn't remember any of the characters, nothing. I know I saw it, but nothing stuck with me at all.
Yeah, I remember I had seen it as a kid. I think I rented it a couple years after it came out. Because I think I remember it too well for when it came out. It's seen it then, but I remember scenes more based off of on one of my VHSs. It had a trailer on that for this movie, and I saw that more often. And so it was really strange because it's one of those trailers where they have lines of dialogue playing over scenes that aren't where the dialogue goes, but they kind of lip sync to the dialogue. So I'm watching the movie and it's weird because the dialogue's not coming out at the right scene from my memory of this trailer. And I'm like, this is trippy and weird. But I didn't like it back then, and I think I had good taste.
So you're saying it hasn't gotten better with age?
No, it's got maybe worse.
That's fair.
Because I was reminded what Scamp sounded like.
I will also say I haven't, like, I guess when my nieces were young, they watched a lot of the sequels to the original Disney pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And like with Little Mermaid and pieces like that, there wasn't that much difference between like the original piece and the art style of the remake or the sequel. But with this being, you're talking a good 40 years in most cases, to at least the mid to late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to see them like try and match that pattern.
Yeah, there's such a huge difference in art style, and this is also something I thought of when I watched Bambi 2 for the podcast. It's such a huge departure. It's so long since the original. I mean, not only does it not need to be made, but the art style just can't be the same because they're using completely different tools.
Well, and the talent is different too. You're talking about folks that, obviously if you're an artist, you can adapt your style, but to try and match for someone that was drawing that specific way for however long that they did it and ask someone else to come in and copy that style. And Katie, I'm sure you can attest to this.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time, and it's not as simple as people would go, oh, well, just, draw it like this.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much, again, IMDb, some of the trivia you can trust, but others, I don't know. According to what I saw in the trivia for this, the model for Scrappy-Doo from Scooby-Doo and Scamp were based off the same model.
What?
Again, I don't necessarily think they were. They are similar in nature, but you could say that about a lot of stuff. I mean, I highly doubt it, but it just, the kind of characters that they are, it kind of is a fun little thing.
Scampy-Doo.
I feel like he's more just kind of his model would have been Tramp, but he just has a bigger head. Scrappy-Doo has a much bigger head even than either of them, so
also true.
He's like 50% head.
That's a hell of a thing to have a strong neck to hold up. Can you imagine the neck muscles on that? No wonder he's so crabby all the time.
Oh gosh,
I mean, he does have a pretty thick neck. I don't think it really stuck out. Well, obviously, I wouldn't have known anybody as a kid, but like there was kind of a lot of big names in this, like far more than there needed to be.
Yeah.
I feel like Disney was there wasn't really even a poster to put these names on because it's not like this is going to a theater. They're putting this out on DVD. It's like, why do you need to get all of these huge names? Like, I mean, somebody like Jodie Benson, I guess it makes sense. She's kind of Disney royalty, so get somebody like that. But like Scott Wolf and Alyssa Milano, why do they need to be the main characters of this movie? I don't know.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's like, oh, we know a guy who knows a guy and we can get this person in your movie or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was weird when I saw the names of some of the people in here. Like even if I'm not super familiar, because like and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but like I know the name Chaz Palminteri, who
Oh yeah,
played
he
the
was
Rottweiler.
so he plays a lot of like kind of gangster-esque like Italian guys. So like untouchable type guys, Goodfellas, those kinds of like very tough characters.
Okay. So he was typecast then.
Oh yeah. No, and that's always what he played. It's like, you know how Robert De Niro always plays like an Italian or, Al Pacino, like they always play like that guy.
Yeah.
And like the, oh,
Mhm.
Baba Goosh, that guy. Yeah, that's essentially I don't know why. They're like the I'm walking here kind of guy, that whole-
Yeah.
But definitely he was typecast for that role. He's known for playing like the kind of tough guy. So
hmm I think the one that surprised me the most was Mickey Rooney played the Irish Wolfhound, which was just such a weird, like, why Mickey Rooney?
because he needs to pay his rent.
I mean, that's why any of them are here, probably.
Yeah, I will tell
Probably.
you this, and this is like this is very like low budget movie thing, but there's this horror movie called Silent Night, Deadly Night. And there are five of them. And there should not be five of them. But in the fifth one, I think it's either Mickey or Andy Rooney. I don't remember which. One of them plays a toy maker, and this same person 2 movies back basically said that this series of movies was like the worst thing ever. And then 2 movies later, he ends up in as a major character in this movie. So,
Did the filmmakers do this on purpose? Like they heard somebody dissing their movie and were like, I'll show you. You're going to be in it and you're going to like it.
it is highly possible. I cannot say that for sure, but I guarantee you that he was eating just a little bit of crow at that point. He either needed to make a house payment or it was easy money or something. But
Probably. I think that's probably why you get, not that Mickey Rooney is like a D-list actor, but like he would have been like in his 90s at this point, I think.
oh yeah.
So they usually, these types of movies try and get as big a name as they can. I feel like they target the people who might be a little bit more desperate. Not that
Oh,
Mickey Rooney is
100%.
desperate or anything, but I don't know.
Well,
I feel
look
like
at
that's who they go after.
Ernest Borgnine and was it Tim Conway that played Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy and SpongeBob? Like
Yeah,
that
but
was a
those are iconic
reoccurring,
characters,
right? But at that time they wouldn't have been. I mean, who
I
would who knows?
suppose.
Amongst a certain subsect of the population, maybe Scramp. Uh, yeah, what was that?
Yeah.
Scamp.
I like his name better. His name is Scramp now.
Who's to say that Scamp isn't like an iconic character worthy of his own, franchise?
No, please.
Although apparently he was like the story basis for his whole thing. Like there was a set of Disney comics that
Yeah,
kind of go into his story.
that probably is why they chose to focus this on him. Not that they had any grand ideas of like, oh, we're going to dive into Disney history and bring back a long forgotten beloved character. No, they just wanted to make a sequel that had name recognition. But it is interesting that they did choose the character that Disney had originally given a comic series to.
Yeah. On that note, like the first like 15 minutes, well, 10 minutes of this thing, if you wanted to check off every major character and place from the original, They basically go through and show you everything
Yeah.
in that first 10 minutes.
Yeah. The way this opened was as soon as it started, as soon as this chorus started singing, I was just shaking my head. I was like, this is such a downgrade. Even though I watched this first, like I had remembered enough from watching the original so many times as a kid that this is such an obvious downgrade. I
Mhm.
don't think
Yeah.
watching this when I did back then, I would have recognized this as the downgrade because I hadn't watched enough movies to notice things. But
Well, then and it was built for a kid. Like this was
yes, yeah.
tailored for a kid audience. It wasn't. I mean, we can scrutinize anything,
Uh-huh.
and you still need to hold the task kids movies on a certain amount of levels. But
Yeah,
it does require a little bit different take than what you're going to do with the normal movie.
yeah,
And I'm not disagreeing with you on anything so far. I'm just saying on that front.
yeah. No, that's kind of the whole problem with these movies is that they're built for kids and only kids. Like they are trying to sell a DVD to parents who just want to buy their kids a movie and keep them quiet. The way that Disney made and still tries to do their movies is something that will appeal to the entire family, be as entertaining for the 3-year-old as it is for the 40-year-old. But that is not this movie.
No.
This movie was aimed at 6-year-olds and probably not too many other people.
Hey, John, the Wish was also not meant for anybody outside of anyone above the age of 6.
I think they tried to make it, but
Um,
they didn't quite get there.
yeah, and that's disrespectful to 6-year-olds. They have better taste.
That is a good point.
I will say though, Wish had a couple of songs that I liked. This had no songs that were even remotely memorable. Even though I watched this morning, nothing stuck with me.
Yeah, like the songs, they didn't flow well, is just all I can say. Like, I don't understand. I don't know understand songwriting. I don't write songs or anything, but like just the way they were written, like they were so uncatchy and so
Out of
just
place.
out of
Yeah.
place, and the characters are just saying words
I
for
think
whatever reason that didn't like stick.
part of it is that it is following up a movie that was not a musical. The original did have songs. Occasionally, those songs were sung by characters on screen, but that was not part of that world. Like, if you're going to have a musical and everybody breaks into song, fine. That's part of this world. I can suspend my disbelief. For this, you're coming off of Lady and the Tramp, where that wasn't the norm for the world, even though you had a couple songs that some characters did sing. This is like they were making a musical, and this did not need to be a musical, and all the characters did not need to break into song. They didn't need to interrupt the action with a song. They didn't need to explain action with a song. It felt so weird in this movie.
But Jonathan, if you put a song in the movie, then you don't have to show the characters' motivations. You can just tell them.
Yeah, I think that's what they were trying to do.
Plus, kids love music, right? Right?
Sometimes. But like I mean I was early teenage, so I wasn't like a small child. This did not stick with me, and I bet if I asked any of my brothers, they would have also completely forgotten about this movie, and none of the music would have stuck with them either.
Yeah, no, nothing really sticks with you.
I
Agreed.
will say that as I was watching, like I was like 2 or 3 songs in, I was like, this is terrible. Who wrote this? And I had to look it up because I was like, there's no way they got actual professional songwriters, but they did. I was shocked when I found out who wrote the songs. Not that I recognized them, but the music was by Melissa Manchester and Norman Gimbel. Norman Gimbel has been working with Disney for decades and decades. Like he's passed on now, but like he wrote "A Whale of a Tale" for the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is an iconic Disney song.
Maybe he was having an off year.
Maybe. Melissa Manchester also is long career. She wrote music for The Great Mouse Detective. She voiced the singer Mouse in the bar scene. She was famous enough that she was a featured guest on The Muppet Show in 1980.
Wow.
So I feel like they should have done a better job. Sorry, but they were not on the top of their game for this movie.
It's like when like when John Williams writes a song and like everyone wants him to score their movie, and sometimes you're like, oh, this one just sounds like all this other music. They're just like, okay, this one I doing for rent, not for passion.
I was just gonna say maybe this is like Mickey Rooney voicing a random dog. They just needed the paycheck.
Yeah.
It could also be a matter of timing. They're like, okay, you have a week to write, 12 new songs and the score, and it better be catchy.
That's true also. Because I don't know how long it took to make this movie, but I can bet they didn't spend decades on it like they did for the original.
Oh, definitely not. And the thing is, like, it feels, just looking at the way this was done, you can kind of see, like, oh, well, you've got, like, the Don Knotts inspired dog catcher, and you've got, like, the Reggie dog was kind of based off Cujo. There's a lot of referential stuff, so you're not creating everything from scratch. You've got, like, your basic palette. And sometimes it's used well, and in this case, it's not used well at all.
No. For a lot of things, even, I don't want to say like the worst movies, like, because even, I don't know why we keep bringing up Wish, but like even with Wish, there were scenes I enjoyed in Wish. It had its moments that I liked. It had moments that did stick with me past the movie that I would watch again. I cannot think, even though I watched this morning, I cannot think of a single scene that fully stuck with me as enjoyable. It was just kind of a chore to get through this movie. I hate to sound so horribly negative, but like they really kind of just phoned this one in, which I guess is the legacy of most of the Disney sequels that they made for the direct-to-video line.
Yeah.
But they really phoned this one in.
I mean, I don't know about you, but every time that Scamp said "yep" whenever he was barking, I don't know what he was doing, but he said "yep" like 90% of his lines. I was filled with joy and happiness because it sounded like a dog. Every time they barked or yipped or whatever they were supposed to be saying, it was so good. They sounded so much like a dog. And then you have Frank Welker come in and he's like, hello, I am actual dog noises. And you're like, well, now that just made everyone sound worse.
I was just kind of annoyed every time you would have a person pretending
No,
to
yeah.
bark.
No, it was bad.
It was so bad. Like, I feel like Scamp was the worst, but like nobody did
Yeah.
a very good job barking other than
No.
Frank Welker.
They could have done dog barking classes if they had really wanted to.
Or just get Frank Welker to do all the barking.
Oh yeah, and
Or
Mod
He was
just
in the
reporting
studio.
dogs.
Yeah,
I feel like that's even cheaper.
that is true. I would also like, I think this one, and well, I guess it would have come out a little bit different, but Little Mermaid's Tale, they kind of follow the kids of our main protagonists from their original movies.
Mhm.
They're essentially doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's probably been just as long as I've seen Little Mermaid too, but I think you're right. It's so lazy.
Yeah.
Like, and as I was watching this, I was like trying to figure out what the point of the story was,
Money.
other than money. I was like, not that it's exactly the same, but it reminds me of movies that I watched, like movies that would have been in our church library. Like they're trying to teach you a lesson. Like, because like, I don't know if you watched any like, I don't know, just Christian media as a kid, but like McGee and Me or anything from Focus on the Family. Every story had to be a lesson, like very heavy-handed. Like there is no nuance at all. It's
Right.
like this is this, and this is why this is good, and this is why this is bad. That's what this felt like. Like the whole point of it was Scamp doesn't like what his parents say, so he runs away from home and finds out the hard way that that the world is a mean place.
I would definitely
It
agree.
felt like stereotypical bad Christian media.
Well, what was weird about this movie is like, in a sense, you could say that the original Lady and the Tramp did have a bit of like questions and like themes around class with the dogs, because you had like
Yeah.
the rich dogs and then stuff. This felt like they decided to really go with that, and they're like, but they treated it as if being a street dog was like alcoholism or something.
I didn't even think of that, but you might be right.
Because like Tramp is like, I will never tell my son I lived on the streets, and like he's
That's
like, I'm
true.
different now, I've changed. And
That
it's
is
like
true.
it was like, what is this? Why is he treating it like this is a bad thing that he was like addicted to or something? And now he's like, oh, I'm free from that life now, or whatever. It was so weird.
Now that you say it, yeah, even like the tests that Scamp goes through, he's like, "Oh, I'm just one more test, and I could be a contender." You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of like, oh, you're joining a street gang, cool.
I think that also kind of ties in with how I was feeling about the movie, like the heavy-handedness of it. Like, even though I didn't pick up on the alcoholism potential theme, it kind of fits with trying to sell a moral in a way that doesn't allow for any sort of nuance.
Yeah. It's weird though, because it's not like it was like alcoholism or whatever. It's not like
Yeah.
all the dogs were getting high or whatever. But like it felt strange that suddenly it was like I thought to an extent it was kind of like don't judge the street dogs is kind of a little bit what Trusty and Jock learned. I mean, like they're just dogs is what it felt like in the original one. But then in the sequel it was like, no, street dogs are bad. You need to be part of a loving American home.
Which isn't that weird though too, because they know what happened with the Tramp.
Yeah.
Like they lived it. They saw that all that stuff. There was, yeah, it totally lacks any nuance at all.
It's just strange because like the way they word it, like Tramp's just like, I changed, I found out what a real true life is like, and you're like, no, you found the life you wanted to live, not like the right way to live or whatever. Like, I don't know, it felt weird. They were just like shaming the other dogs, like, this isn't the way to live. You're supposed to live with your wife and you're supposed to live in your penthouse and just enjoy life and be rich, and you shouldn't like want to go and like travel or whatever. But then they kind of were like, oh, we can walk in the park sometimes. You're like, this just sounds, again, if it's like alcoholism, it's just like, okay, we can have a wine every so often, but just don't have it like all the time. And it's like, okay, what is going on? It felt like we could dabble in a pastime that maybe we shouldn't do all the time. It's like, it's just a walk. What are we doing? It was just weird.
You want to go run in the backyard and possibly get dirty? Gasp. Well, and even with Scamp, like the just the way that he's like, oh well, I want to get dirty and I want to eat out of trash cans and all of that stuff. It's just like,
yeah,
and I that is totally like a kid thing. Like if you're held on too short of a leash, no pun intended, you definitely get that. But I feel like, you know what, if father and son had taken 2 seconds to communicate.
That's what I was thinking through this whole thing. I was like, why aren't you actually just telling him why this is a problem? Because he wouldn't even talk about the fact that he used to live on the streets.
Because it's a horrible addiction he had. Being on the streets, he was addicted to the street life.
He got soft, man. He got soft.
I think this is a problem I have with a lot of movies like this, where somebody just doesn't say something, and like the fact that they withhold this like one piece of information, if they had told it, the entire movie couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we got to make it a secret because we need this thing to happen. It doesn't make sense.
Men can't talk about their feelings.
That's right. I mean, it was 2001. It was a long time ago.
What stays on the streets?
Yep.
I'm sorry, what goes on the streets stays on the streets. Talk about it in your loving family home with your full bowls of food. You're expected to eat all your food. Oh, the horror.
One thing I thought was interesting, and slightly away from like overall themes, they kind of give you context for timing on when this happens, like when this is set. And it kind of plays in because like Victorian times people like kept their feelings under the wraps, but it was like one of the newspapers was from 1911 and 1911 talks about the Titanic.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I missed that.
apparently. I just saw it in the trivia, so.
Well, I probably was only half paying attention because I was so bored. So
you call yourself a Disney podcaster, and I don't even know what to say, man. I'm disappointed.
I think in talking about these two movies, I figured out another thing that about this one of why it's such a downgrade. Because at its core, this is just as simple a story as the original. Because with the original, you basically have the story of lady is adopted, they have a baby, there's a bit of conflict, she has an adventure out in the world, she comes back, saves the day, the end. With this, you've got this dog, he's unhappy with his life, he runs away, he has an adventure, he finds a girlfriend, he comes back, they get adopted, or she gets adopted. That's it. It's a very simple story, but they throw in like all of these complications that really didn't need to be there. Like meeting the junkyard dogs and finding out that, oh, they actually knew Tramp in the past and this guy was, they were kind of friends. And now he's mad at Tramp for leaving the streets.
Okay, so the way he worded it almost sounded like they were like a couple or something. Because he's like, I gave him an ultimatum. It was me or her, and he left. I was like, I'm getting some romantic jealousy from this guy.
Again, I could have been a contender.
You're not wrong. Well, I mean, it's not. That's obviously not what was happening, but you're not wrong about that. But even that, no matter if it was like a couple or just best friends,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense either way because, well, first of all, you didn't even see this in the original movie. Like this is almost as egregious as the entire premise of Bambi 2 happening in the year between the scene where Bambi's mother gets shot and where he grows up. This is just inserting backstory into a movie we've already seen where none of this happened because you never saw him give Tramp an ultimatum or anything like that. Tramp lived on his own. Tramp was his own dog. He wasn't part of this pack. They've invented this whole thing, and they're just trying to tell you that this is what happened when there's nothing to indicate that anything like this happened in the original story of this dog's life. And I feel like they do that with so many of these direct-to-video sequels. They come up with an idea, and then you have to, if you're trying to make it work within the canon, you really have to jam it in between different scenes in a way that kind of, if you're trying to make it so that this is what actually happened, if you tried to cut it all together and make it work, it kind of ruins the original movie. I don't know. That's just, it annoys me when they try and, like, even, I've said before, Bambi 2 is one of the better ones. The way they did it makes no sense. But it has no need to exist. And the world would be a better place if it didn't exist, even though it's one of the least egregious ones in terms of storytelling and everything.
Mm-hmm.
This, like, I'm not going to say, like, I don't feel like this should be canon because it almost kind of ruins the original because it's so dumb.
Tell us how you really feel.
I don't know. I feel like if they had really cared about the original story, they would have put work into making this something that worked with the original story and fleshed out the world and made it into something that can stand alongside the original and stand the test of time. Instead, this is basically a cheap cash grab made to capitalize on the name of the original that has very little to do with the original other than containing the same characters, and it just cheapened the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it killed me, and this is a very small thing, but when Scamp is talking about how he wants to go out and wants to be a garbage dog or a junkyard dog and all the rest.
The garbage dog.
Guess what, Scamp? You don't have to go far because you're already a garbage dog.
Tramp the garbage dog.
Exactly. Like and Tramp goes to talk to him and such. Like, lady just stands there and does nothing. She doesn't try to, be like, oh, Scamp, blah, 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 or anything like that. It's just, she just stands there and watches.
Mm-hmm.
And not that she was necessarily the most vocal in the original, but hold her to that level. There was just no, it's like everything was window dressing with exception of Scamp and Angel.
Yeah. The characters were just off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the closest I can say to anything nice about the characters is that I thought Jodie Benson did an admirable job trying to capture the voice of Lady in the original. Like, I could still tell it was Jodie Benson, but I thought she did a good enough job making it sound like she was actually Lady. But that's as close as I can get to saying something nice about the characters.
This movie was very anti-wig wearing woman.
Yeah.
I feel if anything came close to actually making me laugh, it was that lady. Like I didn't actually laugh, but maybe I just sort of breathed out my nose a little bit heavier.
I will say that was one joke, at least with the first point, the first time it happened, they did follow it up, which I appreciated.
Uh-huh.
You know, the lady gets her wig taken off and it goes into the river or something, and then later they think, oh no, it's Scamp, and they pull the wig out of the river, and it's like, oh, that's not Scamp.
Yeah.
Also, talking about this being a kids movie, when they're doing the junkyard dog song or the street dog song, and the one dog he's chewing on the you don't remember if it was a pillow or a couch or something, but he gets all the foam in his mouth or all the cotton in his mouth, and then talks about not getting distemper shots. It's like, what kid is going to understand distemper?
But this was them trying to put in jokes for the adults.
Point, yeah.
They tried.
And you get some poor kid that he ends up trying to eat a couch, and the parents sue Disney because they're like, hey, my kid's trying to eat a couch based off of this movie.
I would hope that a child would not do that, but you never know.
There was also a random Willem scream.
Was there? I missed
Yeah,
it.
it was in the alley with Reggie right before that.
Okay. I missed
Right
it.
after that. Oh, yeah. I hear a
I
William
must have been
scream.
too checked out.
Yeah, I can hear a Willem scream at like 50 paces, so one of my powers.
Normally I can too, but I guess I was off my game today.
Or at least it sounded like a Willem scream. It might have been like a variation on a scream like that, but it was in that realm of Willem-esque.
I mean, I would trust your Wilhelm scream radar better than I would trust my Wilhelm
Aw.
scream radar because I'm sure you've heard many more than I have.
Yeah, there's a lot of low budget movies that use those. So
Yeah, I don't really have much more to say about this movie. I feel like we've already explained the plot. There's not a whole lot to go through that's much deeper than anything we've said. It is a very simple movie. It's just they did not flesh it out in a way that made it feel worth it. Like this is not an artistic movie. Like Lady and the Tramp, like I said, it's a very simple movie, but the way they did it made it feel like a piece of art. This movie, while the animation was better than some cheap Disney animation, like the early direct-to-video sequels, it still didn't feel like a work of art. It was like they put the bare minimum effort in to make it look Disney-esque, but in a way that was only passable if you're just looking at it. Like once you start watching it, you realize there's not a whole lot of real artistic love put into this thing.
and sadly, I think you can say that about a lot of, not all, like post 2000s Disney stuff, but I think a good chunk of it, that they do suffer from that.
Yeah, even the theatrical ones, it is in that era of Disney's one of their dark ages, as some
Yeah.
people like to call them.
Decisions are made by accountants, not by the
Yes.
creatives.
Yeah. And I don't hit not to go off on a tangent, but I feel like history will eventually tell. I think we're in another Disney dark age. It's not like official or anything, but I don't know. One or two good ones here and there. Like I loved Encanto, but like the things around it is just like fine to borderline terrible.
I will say I really enjoyed Elementals, but I think it was a right place,
Oh,
right time.
that's
kind of
Pixar. I
movie.
don't count Pixar.
Oh, that's Pixar, right? I always
Yeah.
get that screwed up. Okay, my apologies.
No, Elemental is a masterpiece. I loved
Yeah.
Elemental. I went to see it twice in the theater, and
Nice.
these days it is rare for me to go see a movie twice. Like even if I really like it, I'll wait to get it on DVD. I went to see Elemental twice. It helped that I had people that wanted to see it. I was like, I'll go again. But I loved Elemental. It was so good.
Like it's sad that felt more like what you would want for a Disney 100-year thing than Wish. And I'm sorry,
Oh,
we're
yeah,
going back
yeah.
to that again. I apologize. And one other thing, and then I swear I'll get off the Wish tangent, but I was talking to a friend of mine about Wish and how it had all the little Easter eggs from all the different Disney properties and such, or different movies. And they asked me what the one for Pinocchio was, and I couldn't remember it offhandedly. And they're like, well, as long as he didn't stare at a pile of poop in the middle of the street for a solid 15 minutes, we're doing okay.
That is an unfortunate bar.
I know. but it is a bar. So ideally speaking, it's both a form of measurement and a place where you can go to get drunk if it's not going to hit that bar.
I mean, we'll get there when we get to the next one, but I did not remember that there was also a poop joke in the Lady and the Tramp remake. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, so I guess I can't blame Pinocchio for setting the bar this low, because Lady and the Tramp did it first. Unfortunately, it wasn't as blatant and horrible in Lady and the Tramp as the Pinocchio one, but
I don't
it was
think
still
much
there.
can beat. I don't think much can beat the Pinocchio one.
No, and I will say, I should probably save this for the next podcast. We should probably end this one, but I will say I watched. Obviously, this one came out before Pinocchio, and at the time that I watched the Lady and the Tramp remake, it was before Pinocchio, and I was still giving the movies the benefit of the doubt. I was far more charitable to them than probably I should have been. So now, having watched Pinocchio, going back to the Lady and the Tramp remake, I liked it a whole lot less than I did the first time I watched it. I was so annoyed by so many things. I was like, yeah, Pinocchio broke me.
Oh, Disney, you see what you've done to this sweet man? You should be ashamed of yourself. Go stand in the corner and make better stuff.
Look what you've done. You've given him anxiety.
Yes. I don't have words for you that will come up, not you, John, but Disney generally. How dare you?
We should probably end this episode so that we can actually go on and talk about the movie that we're trying to save for the next episode. So
The elephant in the room.
we'll pause for now. And until next time when we go to the Lady and the Tramp remake, do you want to let people know where they can find you if they would like more from you, Katie?
You can follow me on Instagram at Katie Draws Things. I draw things. That is not a dog named Scamp with a terrible voice. So
And Nicki.
After watching this movie, I will be hiding in the very, very back of my theater here on YouTube, Trivial Theater. I do a wide array of random, obscure, and straight up bad movies, but not Disney sequels.
Okay, well, we will see you next time when we talk about the Lady and the Tramp remake from 2019. Thanks for listening to the Disney Movie Marathon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My Linktree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.